Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another great episode of the Five Star Revolution podcast with your host, CJ Price. Thanks for joining us here tonight on the Five Star Revolution podcast. Make sure you go over to Facebook and like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel right now. Tonight, we have another great guest. He's from the famous Rhodes family. His name is Austin Rhodes. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, what's up, CJ? Y'all all right, brother?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for joining us here tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I know we've been talking about this Five-Star Revolution podcast for a minute, so
Yeah, man. I know you're a busy guy. I'm a busy guy, but we finally got it going.
life goes in different directions sometimes, and wrestling's just not. I mean, it's not on the spectrum much for me anymore. It's been a while, so I appreciate you
So,
having me.
so let's get right into it.
Yeah.
This might be a stupid question for you, but I'm gonna ask you anyway because I'm kind of curious. But I know you're a part of the Rhodes family and stuff, but did you watch wrestling when you were a kid? And who were some of your favorites if you did?
Oh, religiously. So just a little like tell you my average Friday night when I was growing up was spent at the Sam Houston Coliseum, and I would know when my grandma picked me up from school, I knew we were going to wrestling on Friday nights. You know what I mean? It's like we were going to be at the Coliseum. So I mean, I literally I grew up around all of them, and I think growing up, like later on in life, I kind of appreciate Gino Hernandez's work a lot more than I did when I was a kid and wanted to hate him, But looking back in retrospect, Gino was a hell of a talent. Jose Lothario, Mil Mascares, all the guys. I mean, uh, Grandma used to bleach their hair, a lot of them, Magnum TA and Barry Windham. They've all been to her house and she bleached all their hair. And they'd go on Saturday morning, they'd all pack up and get out of there. And I mean, I was lucky enough a lot of times to be able to go to grandma's house, on Friday night after the shows. So I got to hang out with a lot of them growing up. I've got not a lot of pictures, but I've got some pictures where, that were taken in grandma's house with all these wrestlers and stuff growing up. It's been my life, my whole life. I've been around it. So it was, I mean, it was kind of natural for me to do, to get into it. I just never really got any help doing it. I mean, Dusty really just let me use his name. And that was about the extent of the help I ever got from him. I never really asked him for much help. I'm one of those guys that really wants to do it all on my own. If I'm going to make it, I want to make it on my own merit. Because I had heard stories early on in my career about guys, not really getting the respect that they deserve because they got a handout or a hand up or something. And I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to earn my way in. And I mean, I thought for a long time I was going to, and then 25 years later, I kind of look back and I'm like, man, did I really need to do it that long? But I mean, growing up, God, Andre the Giant, man, I was so scared of him. It's not even funny. We used to go eat at Bennigan's um, after the show, and he would come in and he would sit down and just beers, 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 beers. He would drink some wine, but beer, man, constantly. I mean, I was definitely afraid of him, but over the years, I started to kind of, you know, loosen up around him. He was scary, man, for a kid. Andre was scary. He was scary big. So, we grew up around all of them. I remember my sister, her biggest thing when we were a kid, she wanted to meet Sting, and Sting was still running as the Blade Runners with Eddie Gilbert and Ultimate Warrior Jim Hellwig. So they were running the those Blade Runner gimmick or whatever it was, and she wanted to meet him, and he wouldn't come out and meet her until he put his face paint on, So it was just like he stayed in character always. So it was just one of those. Um, I was living a dream back then. Shoot, I mean you grow up watching your family do what I grew up watching my family do. He's a household name in the '80s, the nine. Well, shit, all the way up until he died. People knew who Dusty was, and it was just kind of natural, I think, for me to want to do it because of that. And I found my own path. Tug Taylor trained me. Very, very good trainer for your basics. We lost Tug a few years ago, but he was excellent at what he did. I went on and worked at NWA for Crockett, and I mean, really, I got a lot more there than I got anywhere else because that locker room was just absolutely chock full of old school talent. Greg Valentine, Johnny Valentine was still around. Sam Houston was my traveling buddy. Skandar Akbar was really detrimental in my growth. And so was Grizzly Smith. Grizzly Smith was what had a large part of it because he knew Sam and I were going out getting fucked up every night anyway when we got done. So he would make sure every day, the next day, we were in the ring at practice at 2 o'clock when the ring got set up. He was working all that alcohol out of us. So, I mean, it was I I went through three phases, I guess, of becoming who I was. Becoming the Austin Rhodes character. Went through three phases. The very first phase was absolutely at Tug's gym down in Houston. Um, and then I went through a sort of a developmental, a not really like to say it as developmental as we know what developmental is, but just as far as my character went, I was still developing and trying to figure out who I was, and ultimately I came out really thinking I had quite a bit of Barry Windham in me, because he was one of my favorite guys. Man, I loved Barry's work. He was so fluid. He was like just magical to watch. Um, you hardly ever saw Barry, botch a spot. Barry was very good at what he did. So, I mean, I kind of pride myself towards him with a little bit of Dusty isms, and all the stuff that I really grew up in and around. And it's hard to find these days. Pro wrestling's awesome, and I love it. I'll always love it, but I try not to even watch the product now. When I retired, I've been retired 6 years. When I retired, it's like you have to walk away. I mean, back behind me is what my shoot life is nothing but construction these days. I own a construction company and I do really great with it. But all of my whole life is filled with wrestling memories now. I mean, but that's pretty much what it is. It's a memory. I left Dallas and traveled and I did TV5 in Memphis, and we were doing TV in Dallas. So I was really young when I started doing some TV. And then come to find out, Brandon Baxter was on TV in Dallas, wound up going up to Memphis, and he was running TV5 in Memphis. So I just made a phone call. I was like, "Hey, man, I heard you was running some TV up in Memphis." He's like, "Man, Austin, get on down here, brother. We got a spot for you, bro." So I mean, he knew. Everybody knew it was. I at least I like to think I was a natural at it, and I was pretty good. Was I good enough to be the 1% of guys that makes it? I don't know. I don't know that Dusty or the family ever kept me out of it per se. I kind of feel like they did because Dusty always had the book. Everywhere he was at, Dusty had the book. So I think he could have helped me at any point in time that he wanted to. I just never asked him. So, but that's not to say he kept me out of it either. Like I said, I wanted to make it on my own, whether I did or not. Obviously I didn't, but for whatever reason that may have been is beyond me. What I do know is they're them and we're us. Like there's two portions of the family. There's the guys that made all the money and all the fame and fortune and the wealth, and then there was the rest of the family. And I think I fell in that rest of the family category, which really drove me honestly to do better. I mean, it's like everywhere I got booked, I might be, I might open the show for the first time they ever see me work. I might open the show, or I'm second or third match. By the next time they had me there, I was working in their semi-main or their main event. They've got me in an angle. They're wanting to drop a belt on me, everywhere I went. So that kind of, showed me what I was doing was worth it. That, my name definitely gets me in the door. It does. I'm a Rhodes. Um, my work kept me in the door. You know what I mean? Once I got in there and I showed everybody what I could do, that's really where I started to excel. I'm fearless, man, in the ring. I would get in there and just dance with you all night long and have a great time doing it. But at the end of the day, the people loved my work as far as I could tell my whole career. I got very good responses and reactions, and my spots were big guy spots. I mean, hell, I'm 6'4". I'm over 300 pounds now, but I think my running weight was around 275 or so. So I was a big guy. I mean, a couple of spots I did with backflips in them and stuff. I mean, I moved around good for a big guy. You didn't see guys my size doing the things that I was doing, and that a lot of that's in part to Sam Houston. Really helped me out learning to be comfortable in my own skin up in the ring. So that was, I owe a lot to Sam. I owe a lot to his dad, which was also Jake the Snake Roberts' dad. I'm pretty sure you know Sam Houston, Jake
Yep.
Roberts.
Yep.
So I was fortunate. I was real lucky to get in front of those people early in my career. I was a couple of years into my career when I went up to Dallas. I'd already been working a couple of years. And when I went to Dallas, I was still working as Tracy Austin. I had not even thought to call and ask Uncle Dusty if I could use the Rhodes name. And a good friend of mine talked me into it. He said, just call him. What's the worst he can do? Say no, you know? So one day I just got the balls enough up to call him and say, hey, can I use the name? And he goes, let me tell you something, baby. I worked a long, hard time for that name. So just don't ever do it no bad, baby. Don't ever do it no bad. I said, all right, Uncle Dusty, I won't do it no bad, I promise. So I tried to stay, within the realms of what I thought was acceptable for a Rhodes to be out there doing. Dusty Dusty was awesome. Dustin was great in his own right. I think the whole Gold Dust thing had its good sides and its bad sides. Ultimately, he's come out of it on the other end, being a 30-year veteran, and gets mad respect, and he could still go. God, man, I mean, I have seen him work a few shows, and he can still go. Cody's just Cody. I don't get along with Cody at all. Dustin and I grew up, really like we didn't see each other a lot. None of us saw each other. Cody says he doesn't know who I am, but I've only met him twice in his lifetime. I've met Cody. The first time he was sucking his mama's tit in my living room when his mom Michelle came to visit because they were in Houston, and Cody was a newborn. It's the first tit I ever saw. The first live boob I ever saw was Cody's mama's tit because he was on it. So, and then we went up and vacationed up there in Marietta with them, and I was with my grandma, and I think he was, not even 10 yet. And that's when, I mean, we got to go around. I met Ted Turner. We went to CNN Tower, all that stuff, and really had a good vacation with grandma and Dusty. But it was rare that they were ever around. Cody, where he got on Twitter and blasted me and said, "I don't even know who you are. You're tossing names out there." And I'm like, dude, whose fault is it that we don't know each other? It's not our fault. So why do you have any heat towards me at all? I've never done anything to you. You say yourself you don't know me, so why take this route? Because they don't want to know the poor side of the family. Not that I'm poor. I own a business and I do really good with it. I make a lot of money. I'm not poor by any means, but I'm not doing what they're doing up there. You know what I mean? I'm not famous. I think maybe for a while I was a little famous, but I'm not famous. It wasn't really about fame for me ever. It was about the love of pro wrestling. I absolutely grew up loving pro wrestling. There was nothing in the world that was more important to me than being and becoming a pro wrestler ever. I always wanted to do this. So I did it. So I got to live my dream. I got to see the world on somebody else's money. I don't have anything to prove to anybody. I damn sure don't have anything to prove to Cody because I did 25 years of my own while he was still, snot nosed shit in his diapers. It doesn't matter to me. So it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't affect me, especially now. The only thing that I really say is if it was anything, it would be about the vindication of it. It would just be like, don't just shit on the 25 years that I put in the business. You know what I mean? At least stop for 10 seconds and acknowledge that, hey, we've got a cousin down here that's been wrestling for 25 fucking years. He's a Rhodes. I mean, Dusty let me use the name. I'm a legitimate Rhodes. My mom is Dusty's sister. It's legit. But for whatever reason, he wants to get on there and tell the Twitter world that he has no idea who I am, and I'm not even the one that started the conversation.
I have
Uh,
a question though. I
all
have a
right,
few questions. Sorry, you just went on the tire right there,
I
so I didn't
did.
want to stop
All right, bro. I told you, get me on here. I'm gonna talk.
you.
That's the best.
So when Dusty died, God rest his soul,
Yeah,
did you end up going to the funeral and seeing them?
I did not. No, I did not. No, well, number one, it was in Florida and I was working, so I couldn't get off. But number two, I wouldn't have gone anyway. I wasn't like, they're distant relatives. They're first relatives, first cousins, my first uncle, but they're distant relatives. It's not a big deal for me to go to a funeral on, with all of that family. I don't. There's no reason for me to. We're not close. In other words, uh,
Okay.
Grandma would talk to Dusty. Now, here's the one thing that I'll say I respect the hell out of about my uncle. No matter where in the world he was, and you can ask anybody that really knows him. No matter where in the world he was, on Friday nights he would call his mama, and she raised me from the time I was 13 years old. I had a pretty bad family life growing up, with my stepdad. So it was just kind of one of those things. So I lived with my grandparents. She was my actual guardian, legal guardian, since I was 13 years old. So on Friday nights, he would call and I would be sitting right next to her and I'd be able to hear the whole conversation. And I mean, I grew up learning a lot more than just, your normal stuff, just going to the school and training and all that. When I started wrestling, I was ready to wrestle. I mean, it was on. So, but he did every Friday night. Didn't matter where in the world he was. I tell you, he was on his phone with his mama because I mean that was how he got started. Friday nights, and those wrestling those circuits. He would see his mama every Friday night, and he knew he would. So he always called her on Friday nights. After,
Couple more questions.
yeah,
So when you were active and you switched over to the Austin Rhodes name, did
yeah.
you feel pressure to like keep that name
Oh,
respected and yeah?
yeah, always. I knew what was expected of me because of the name. So I mean, I was never a 50% guy. I was never a 75% guy. I was 110%, 100% of the time. That's what you got. It's the only way to do it and do it right. If you're going to get any respect and you're going to do it right and make a name for yourself, you have to live it. You've got to give everything you've got to it, or else it's just going to chew you up and spit you right back in the same bowl it picked you up out of. You're not, so I'm one of the few guys that Tug trained who really just jumped out of the nest. And when I say that, I mean traveled, like well traveled. A lot of his guys stayed local. They were very good in their own right. They were very good, but they stayed local. And when I say local, I mean statewide, basically. They stayed in Texas most of their career. They may hop over and do some stuff in Louisiana, Oklahoma. I did not. I moved around. I mean, I went all the way East Coast, West Coast, up north. I did not stay still for 25 years. I moved around a lot. My family suffered for it even, because I was so focused on what could make me better, where can I go? And because of the training that I got here in Texas, and don't everybody that watches this that's not from Texas, don't hate me for saying this, but Texas in the 90s, the 80s, everything, I mean, is famous for producing better quality wrestlers than just about anywhere else, minus maybe Canada. I'd say Canada and Texas are the two places that produce the best talent. Let's just be real about it. So when
What
I
about Minnesota? I think Minnesota has some great talent.
now, okay, so Minnesota, if we're talking about shoot wrestling, you're right. But yeah, there have been a few come down from Minnesota that have been really good workers. But on the indie circuit, when you're out working them indies and you see a Texas guy walk in, you're fitting to get a good show out of him. And it's like, maybe this guy's laces are laced up wrong, or this guy's wearing a t-shirt and he shouldn't be, or that guy's just not doesn't quite fit the bill. But when I would walk in that door, I brought the whole package. From the minute I walk in the place, I turn Austin Rhodes on. I'm in entertainment mode, so you get Austin Rhodes from start to finish the whole time I'm in front of you. You know, and a lot of guys just didn't have that about them. I'm not dogging any of them. Trust me, the guys who had it know they had it because they were they were top bill. They got the semi mains, the main events. They were the ones that people were actually paying to see every week. Or, well, in the Mid South, it was, we were running 8 shows a week. We were doing 7 shows like every night. And then Saturday morning, we were doing TV5 in Memphis. So we were literally running 8 shows a week around the Mid South, Mississippi, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas. We were just traveling around as much as we could just right there. That was the most active I've ever been, was when I was floating around the Mid South, because it literally, we were nonstop. We had the new Texas Outlaws gimmick going. I met a kid that was doing security, and I gave him a name and stuck him in the ring with me, and I taught him how to wrestle at ringside as my tag team partner. I'd do a spot and I'd tag him
Nice.
and tell him, change one thing, go. you know, get in there and do basically what I'm doing, but change something every time. And
Quick
he,
question. Quick question. Sorry, because I don't want to run out of time.
all right,
So, for those people that are listening right now that don't know who you are,
yeah.
explain who Austin Rhodes was when he was in character. Like, who was Austin Rhodes? What was he about?
Texas Legacy, Austin Rhodes, formerly one half of the new Texas Outlaws. We were good. Austin, as an individual, was stellar. I did about 2 years as a heel. I went under the Suicide Messiah, Austin Rhodes. The rest of the time, it was all red, white, blue, and fun times. I mean, we've had trash cans burned. We've had police escorts out of buildings. We did some really good work to get people that pissed off at us as heel tag team when I was so New Texas Outlaws with Ricky Murdoch was half heel, half the time, and then the other half the time we were faces. So we got to play around on both sides of the spectrum, and it was really fun to do that. But
What was your favorite thing to do out of
yeah,
those two? What was your favorite thing to do, face or heel?
I mean, I really enjoyed being a heel. I did, but man, there's no drug in the world, I promise you, that can top the feeling that you get when you're a face and you get a whole crowd moving with your fucking pinky finger. It's like you can't beat it. There ain't nothing like it. It's an adrenaline like nothing, like jumping out of an airplane, man. It's crazy, what it does to you, and it makes you feel invincible. I find out now, 25 years later, I wasn't invincible because it hurts. It still hurts. so
So, are you ready for a little challenge, my friend? I do this to every single person that comes on my podcast. You're going to be no different. Are you ready for a challenge?
all right, yeah,
The,
I'm always up for a challenge. What's up?
the challenge is to cut a promo, 30-second promo in character on anything you want. Do you think you can do it?
uh yes, I can, absolutely. And just give me a location. That's what I need.
What about Boston, Massachusetts?
Boston, Mass, baby. Let me tell you something right now. The Texas Legacy, Austin Rhodes, is coming up to see you. I'm going to get up there. We're going to rock the house. We're going to do it right and tight. We're going to do it all night. I'm going to show up. I'm going to bring balls a blazing. We're going to do it right. It's like a roller coaster ride with me. Sometimes it's up and sometimes it's down, but it's a hell of a ride all the way around. I don't sweat the petty stuff. I pet the sweaty stuff. And if you don't like it, I'll rip your ears off, stick them in your back pocket so you can hear me kicking your ass. Drive it like you stole it, lick it when you roll it, and light that fatty for the outlaw, daddy. Look out, coming to you.
I love it. That was awesome. That was the best promo I've had on this podcast.
I can still talk a mile of shit, man. Whether I can walk it or not, I can still talk it.
And also, I'm sure you get this a lot. The resemblance is
Yeah.
on point, man. You
That
you really do look like the Rhodes.
yeah. It really is a shame that Cody's taken the stance he has because I mean, honestly, it's nothing but honor for me. I'm not trying to dishonor him. I'm not trying to dishonor the name. It's been all about honor for me. I've honored every single person that's ever taught me anything in this business, and I've loved them all. And as their cousin and their family, I love them. But at the end of the day, they've never done anything for me, and I've never asked them to either. But they've never done anything for me. So it just is what it is. I'm gonna live my life regardless.
So
Dusty.
carrying that Rhodes name when you were wrestling,
Yeah.
how do you? I'm assuming you got a little bit of backstage heat. How did you deal with backstage politics?
I mean, so I got a lot of people like, so this thing with Cody is something I've dealt with my whole career. It's everybody's related to somebody. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. It's like, oh well, my uncle's great grandfather and twice removed is somebody famous. Okay, so what? I didn't really try to go out. In fact, I even told promoters, don't push so much that I'm kin to Dusty. I would rather you push me than push that fact. And it's like you either accept it or you don't. I'm not going to try to convince you. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I went through that phase already. I had to do it the whole time I was growing up. When I would tell some kid in school that Dusty Rhodes was my uncle, they'd always go, no, he's not. No, he's not. So I've been defending that my whole life. It's nothing to me to continue to be proud of where I came from and the heritage that I really bring to the table. If I could still be in the business, I would love to be like maybe a manager or a color commentary or something like that would be awesome. But uh, again, when anytime I'm around a wrestling ring, I want to be in it. I want to be up there moving around and taking bumps, and I never had any real bad injuries or nothing. But my back is bad now. My hips are bad. My knees are going bad. So it's every bump they say every bump takes off some of your lifespan. So I think it's true. I tried to take easy bumps and I tried to be easy to work with in the ring. And a lot of guys will tell you I was pretty easy to work with in the ring. I was a little stiff, but that's because I used to work John Hawk. I used to work Bradshaw a lot, man. Bradshaw, when he came back from Germany, I just stepped into NWA and Dick Murdoch. Well, I mean, you do we have time for like a small story, quick
Yeah,
story?
yeah. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
So John had just come back from Germany and I had just started. I went 5 weeks in a row and I sat outside the Sportatorium in Dallas 5 weeks. And every week Sam would walk by. He's like, hey, what's up, brother? He knew me. I'm still talking for you. I'm still talking for you. Well, all of a sudden, one night, Billy Joe Travis no shows. He gets drunk somewhere and he doesn't show up. So Akbar sticks his head out the back door. He says, you got your shit, kid? I said, yes, sir. He said, all right, well, go get it. You got a spot tonight. So I came in, got dressed. Bradshaw had just come back from Germany, and brother, he was stiff as a fucking brick. So they put me in the ring with him. I don't get no offense. He squashes me. I didn't get anything. I'm a kid. All right. I have no idea what they expect. This is the biggest production I've ever been a part of. I didn't know how to act yet. So Act says, well, fuck that Billy Joe Travis kid. I like your look. So we're going to give you a shot next week. Come back. Next Friday night, there I was at the dump. They put me in the ring again with Bradshaw. He dumps me on my head, gives me a concussion. I'm leaking fluid out of my nose when I'm standing up. It's not blood, but it's that brain fluid. You just got fucked up,
Yeah.
right? He dumped me over off the top rope, landed me right on my head. So when I get back to the locker room, Murdoch, which I've known Dick Murdoch since I was a kid, Dick walks up to me and he goes, "Kid, I love you. But if I see you letting him do that to you again, I'm gonna kick your ass when you get back in this locker room." So he walks in and tells Akbar, he says, "Hey, put this fucking kid in there with one more time." So the next week, you could just see Bradshaw, like licking his chop. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna just murder this kid, brother." That third week, every time he'd lick me, I'd lick that dude back. He'd crack me and I'd crack him back. He'd crack me and I'd crack him back. We went back and forth for a good 15 minutes. And I walked back in the locker room after. I mean, obviously, I put him over. Now, just to be clear, I never won a match with Crockett with NWA. I was green. I was their locker room. Throw the guy in there and let him do whatever. So I never won a match under Crockett with NWA. I did later on with NWA. I won some. I was actually an NWA Southern Tag Team Champion, but I've had belts for NWA. I was also the NWA Southwest Tag Team Champion. Me and Chaz were. So anyway, I come back in the locker room and he just kind of hugs me, you know. So about 2 weeks go by and we're doing these spot shows, and we've got Corsicana, Texas. This is when I got broke into the business, and I mean literally broke into the business. We're in Corsicana, Texas, and we're sitting there on the bench. I'm kind of got my stuff out, and Rod Price and he doesn't talk to me. Rod doesn't talk to me. I've been around him for a few weeks. He doesn't really talk to me. So he comes and he sits down next to me. I'm like, "Hey, Rod." He's like, "Hey." And I'm like, "What's going on?" He says, "Oh, man, just my girl left me, and I'm just, man, I mean, I'm a little sad." And I'm like, "Oh shit, man, it'll be all right, buddy. Don't worry about it, man. It'll be cool." He's like, I was like, "What was her name?" He's like, "Yeah, Maria. Yeah, she left me though, and that's all done." So, "Oh, well, don't worry about it, Rod." So Ack comes walking by. He said, "Hey, I'm glad you two shits are sitting together because y'all are working each other tonight." So I'm thinking, all right, well, that's kind of weird, but okay. So we get in the ring. James Beard's the ref. Rod puts me in the sugar. I mean, he wraps me up, grabs my leg, lifts it up. I'm on one leg, and I'm in this abdominal stretch, and he has now connected his hands, and I can't move. I can't get out of it, and it's hurting really bad. And James is asking me, "You want to give up? You want to give up?" And I'm like, at first, I'm like, "No, no, I'm just going along with it." "You want to give up?" I'm like, "No." So Rod starts whispering in my ear. He says, "Oh, Maria, I fucking love you so much, Maria. I just miss you so much." And I'm like, "Rod, what the fuck, man?" And he goes, "Oh, Maria, I just want to fuck you one more time, Maria." And I'm like, "Fucking Rod, what the fuck, dude?" And he won't let go of me, and I can't move. I can't get out of it. And he starts stretching it. And James is down there going, "You want to give up?" And I'm like, "Well, fuck yeah, now I want to give up. I want to give up. I'm trying to tap out. I can't reach myself. I'm trying to tap." And I'm going, "Yeah, yeah." And James is going, "He said no. He said no." And I'm like, "What the fuck, dude? Let me out of this." So for like 10 minutes, I'm wrapped up in this fucking hole. There's maybe 20 people in the building. It's no big deal. So when when he finally lets me go, fucking he does his finishing move. Pins me, and he goes locker room, and I'm just like, man, I can't move. I'm like, oh my god, this hurts so bad. And I kind of creep back to the locker room, kind of like holding my shit, and I creep back, and as soon as I open the door, the whole fucking locker room, we're talking everybody, was standing there shaking their, clapping their hands. And Rod walks up and took my hand. He said, "Welcome to the business, kid." So, I mean, that's literally how I got my cherry popped. Rod Price popped my cherry. I love it, dude. We still talk. Rod and I are good friends today.
One last question for you, Mr. Rhodes.
Yeah,
So, if I was looking to break into the business,
yeah.
what's one piece of advice you would give me?
I mean, if I had to choose one,
Or just any advice at all?
give it everything you got because there's no other way to do it. Don't half-ass it. You know what I mean? If you're gonna do it, commit to it, and never ever give less than 110% every time you're in front of someone. That's the only way I ever grew in this business, was to give everything I had, because that's what they expect. I look at wrestling as the gladiator days of today. You know what I mean? That's what pro wrestling is. So even the gladiators in Rome, they were there to entertain you, to give their life for that, but they were there to entertain you. It was all for entertainment. to entertain the people, to give them something to watch, some spectacle, something to do. Be that spectacle. That's the only way you'll ever be successful. You'll never do it going to one show once a month thinking you're a pro wrestler. I mean, 10,000 matches. How long does it take to do that? 20 years at least, if you're wrestling every single night. You know, that's not that many. 10,000 is not that many, honestly. But you'll never do it because there's not that kind of work out there. When I was doing it, it was a lot easier. So, because there was a lot more work, you could actually get in a territory and run that territory. I mean, I worked for Shawn Michaels in San Antonio when he was running. I worked for Tug down in Houston. I was working Austin for Lone Star. I was working Dallas for Crockett. I was working with the Galvans down in Corpus. We were staying busy on the weekends. But it wasn't until I stepped out of Texas and got to where I was wrestling 7 nights a week, which is almost impossible to do these days, that I really started to understand what it took, what these guys really have gone through for years and years and years to still have this thing called wrestling that we all know and love available to you on an indie level. Um, it was difficult, but you give it all you got and it'll pay off, in other ways than monetary. It was never about the money for me. It was always, just like I said earlier, the love of the game. I loved pro wrestling. I still love pro wrestling. It's got a spot right here in my heart that's been there since I was a child. I don't remember a single day in my life without pro wrestling being a memory in it. So as young as I can possibly have any memories of, I remember pro wrestling. I remember the Sam Houston Coliseum. I remember all of that. Um, I'm one of the guys that grew up in it and around it, not just wanting to do it. I grew up around all of those guys. I mean, I would watch everything on TV, but I never hardly watched it live. I was always in the back, running around with Dusty and tugging on coattails for whoever was back there that I could be bugging. When I was a kid. So I didn't ever hardly watch it live. I was always in the back. That's where I was most interested at, was how is all this put together? How does all of this work? Once I figured all that stuff out, wrestling part came easy, because I mean, if it was wrestling, I was watching it. When I was training, we were bootlegging tapes out of Japan for All Japan and New Japan. We were bootlegging everything we could get just so we could watch it. During the Monday Night Wars, we had two TVs on top of each other. And when one of them would be on commercial, we'd have the other one on. Or if one of them's got a match we weren't really particularly interested in it, we'd be watching the other one. So we would just, instead of flipping channels, we could have them both running. We had two TVs stacked. That's how dedicated we were. And that's what I would say, is that if you want any kind of advice, is that's what it takes. It takes that kind of commitment.
We appreciate you coming on the Five Star Revolution podcast, sir. And if you have any social media that you want to plug, go right ahead.
I don't. I mean, I've still got my Austin Rhodes Facebook page that's been up for years. I've got a YouTube channel called The Rhodes Show, but I haven't really posted anything on it. I'll throw this up on it, though. That'd be great. And, it just is what it is. We just, if you live in Austin and you need a deck built, a patio, or a pergola, call me. I do great work. First time fence is my business, and it's because we do it right the first time, not because it's our first one. It's because we do it right the first time. It's got a nice little motto to it. So, I mean, I get up every day and I go make a living, just like I've always done. I get up every day and go make a living. Same song, different dance, whatever. However you want to look at it.
And if I'm ever in Texas, I'll definitely come visit you, my friend.
Please do. Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, bring some hotties. I got an 8-man jacuzzi out in the backyard, big old house, legacy mansion, right? Yeah.
All
So
right, sounds good, brother. Well,
come on.
thank you so much for coming on the Five Star Revolution podcast. It was a true pleasure, and we definitely got to have you back on. I know you have way more stories.
I've got a lot, and I mean, really, CJ. Look, I appreciate you having me on, dude. I mean, this has been just a little bit of time for me to get back in the old life a little bit, and I always appreciate that. But uh, 5 Star Revolution podcast, definitely cool podcast. Let's get me back on. I'll come back on. No problem.
Sounds good, brother. Thank you so
All right,
much. Have a great night, man.
all right. You too. See ya.